So we are here today with a fellow podcaster, a podcaster and an adoptee. And her podcast is called Art Heals All Wounds. This is Pam Uzzell joining us from Oakland, California. Welcome, Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, Louise and Sarah, and it is such a pleasure to be on this show because I listened to it so much. It's felt like a lifeline to me.
Oh,
So being here is really, really amazing. Yes,
I'm
I'm
so glad to hear that. We never really, unless we get feedback, you just how it
yes.
is having a podcast. Put it out there. It falls where it may,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, not to overdo it, but it's been a little bit of a life-changing journey to listen to this podcast. So it's really, really such an amazing thing you're doing. And I can tell from the other guests too that they
Thank
also
you.
feel that. Yeah. So
Did you come out of the fog with us together? Or were you already?
I think I had one foot out of the fog, but not very much. And I remember listening to the earlier shows and thinking like, oh, this is kind of cool. And you guys also to even start a show, I think you had to have a little bit of yourself out of the fog.
For
But
sure.
yeah.
You say that
we weren't. Yeah.
I found, that something happened the other day where a Facebook memory came up where I had taken a picture of a Jeanette Winterson paragraph. She was adopted. And I mean, this was probably 12, 13 years ago that I put that picture and talked about being adopted. So absolutely. I think
Yeah,
you're
we
right.
did.
It was definitely one foot out, but just nothing to
Not
precipitate.
connecting.
Yeah, not connecting it. So
Well, it's weird because it's scary to come out of the fog. And that's why your podcast was so life-changing for me, because I had a therapist say to me, we had been meeting for a couple of years and I had never mentioned that I was adopted. And we had talked about all these things.
During your therapy sessions, never?
Yes, never. And then finally I said, oh yeah, and I was adopted. And she was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
And she said, there's a whole profile of, what people experience if they've been adopted. And I was amazed. And then I had friends who had adopted a daughter who had gone deep, deep into the research because they're of my generation. And so they're much more open to therapy and exploring this. And they both were like, oh, here are these books. You have to read them. And I kind of glanced through them, but it is scary to come out of the fog a little bit because you do have to let go of a lot of things that's kind of held you together. Maybe not very well, but yeah. So
and then also just facing like, oh, wait a
I
minute.
know.
This isn't the wonderful thing. There's a lot of dark history to it, a lot of layers to it. It might change your relationships with the people in your life.
Yes.
So there's something safe about remaining in the fog.
Oh, there really is.
Yeah, there is.
There really is. But yeah, so I don't know if you're ready for me to talk about my experience yet, but I've had a lot of revelations listening to your show and also doing some of the reading. Some of the books that you guys are reading, I'm just like, no, I don't think I can handle that. So it is sort of like, oh, thank goodness I'm getting this digest of this book because I don't know if I could read.
That's what my friend says. We read it for her.
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was adopted at 2 months old in Arkansas and closed adoption through the state. And listening to all your guests, it's made me think a lot about so much time I've spent in therapy, kind of picking apart, oh, my parents were this, my family was this. And then I realized that it's easier to sum up if I just say it was very lonely. It was very lonely. I felt like I had been put in a family that was, good parents, although we definitely had some clashes where I think that they were wrong still, but good parents, but just so much like a different,
like an alien.
Yes, like an alien. And in fact, my daughter who does artwork always refers to me as an alien and herself as well. But that's such a perfect way to describe it. And I was not the lonely only. I had an older brother who was also adopted, and I really feel like he was part of the reason why I felt like very lonely. He was sort of like a little clone of my parents in terms of what they liked, what they wanted to do, and their interests. But
He was like the
also,
compliant adoptee that fit.
no, I was the compliant
Oh,
adoptee.
interesting.
I was the compliant adoptee. It's so interesting. And I had all the things like horrible, horrible stomach issues, all those things you read about. When I read, the primal wound, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, this is so familiar. Not all of it, because you have to be sort of a type, but so much of it, I felt like, how can this be like the answer to these mysteries that I lived with as a kid? But yeah, my brother really also, it seemed like he was very resentful of like having another person come into the family. And
What was the age difference?
3 years, 3 years. And yeah, I feel like there just was not space for me in that family. Some of it was my parents, and some of it I really feel was my brother, and still, even till the point when my parents passed away, it is sort of like sucking up all the attention. And I was sort of like a good acquaintance who would come to visit. It was really
I went to a,
I feel like that in my family now, so I know it. I know exactly.
Yeah.
I went to a therapy thing. I've never even told Sarah this maybe, but I was focused at the time. I had a lot of anger towards my brother. This is years ago, before both my adopted parents had passed. And we had a lot of problems, my brother and I, for years. And he's not adopted, but he's 5 years older. And I was at this thing to fix my marriage. And I kept saying, well, my brother, this, and they said, really, it's your parents, because he was a child too.
Right.
So the safety should have started with the parenting, right? But I couldn't like put it there. I could put it on my brother, but it's interesting what you're saying, because you're both kids, but what's the messaging going on? Just reflecting on that. I'm not saying about your home, but that was interesting you said that.
Well, but it is a good point, because one of the things that happened up until my early teenage years is that we would physically fight. And the majority of the time is that I didn't start these fights. We'd be arguing verbally, and something I would say would set him off, and then he would start the physical fights, and I would definitely fight back. But
I had that with my adopted brother too, and we were 3 years apart.
Isn't that weird though?
I was older, but I mean, it was violent fights.
Really?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
really. I remember once driving and he was pulling my hair while I was driving. I mean, really intense fights. Yeah.
Wow. That's the last fight we got into. I was maybe 12 and he was 15. And by the end, he had me down on the ground, choking me. And I was just reaching up, punching. And we kind of called a truce. We said we will never physically fight again. But when I look back, I think, and my parents would sort of say, stop fighting, stop fighting. It's like, no, this is an older guy hitting a girl. It's beyond stop fighting, and luckily I have 2 girls. They've never been hitters or anything, they've never saw their differences that way. But I can't imagine having an older sibling who's much stronger and just and
dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous.
It is,
especially with the kind of, anger, obviously. That unrealized, unhealed.
Yeah.
That he had as well.
Boy, that's what I was referring to him.
Yeah. And
dangerous. You were in danger.
I look back at it and I'm kind of in shock, to your point, Louise, that my parents did not handle it differently.
Yeah.
It's not stop fighting. It's you cannot hit a smaller girl. You can't hit a girl, period. But it's just really amazing to me. But mostly it just was lonely. Nobody shared my interests, and I was told often that my interests were weird by my parents.
Were you an artist then, like into the arts? And
I was a reader. I was a reader. That was my
How is that weird?
safety net.
I had that too.
Me
Told
too.
I was
I'd be thrilled.
weird. Put the book down and go outside and
yeah, I got a lot.
Let you know, like.
Well,
Why?
they didn't think that reading was weird, but any other interest I have had, like filmmaking, like seeing certain arts and things like that, they're like, you always like the weirdest things. It's like,
a lot of the world also joins me in that.
Arkansas. Sorry, Arkansas.
Yeah. But you know what is weird?
Listen, my biological family's from Arkansas.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
That's amazing.
I've never been to Arkansas.
Oh, I've
been. It's a journey I need to make. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some cool spots there. I mean, I'm
there
not
are.
trying to trash it.
She's just being funny.
Yeah.
But actually, my town has an amazing art scene, which I wish I had been involved.
Was that Eureka Springs?
No, it's this little town near the Louisiana border called El Dorado. And they have an amazing art center, great theater production, and then other art classes. Lots of music, which I was heavily involved in, either through church or through playing in the orchestra for, the summer musical that would be put on, things like that. So it actually is a very heavy arts town.
Can I make a joke about El Dorado? Because my mother-in-law's from El Dorado, Kansas, and it is El Dorado. She speaks some Spanish.
Well, but it
kills me, right?
But the Midwest and South proudly mispronounces their phonetically, because we do it in Missouri here too.
I know, and I could never.
It means gold, people. It means gold.
I know, but I also speak a little Spanish, but I would never walk into that town and say El Dorado.
No, I know. We have
looked at like you were insane. Yeah.
So were you born in Arkansas?
I was born in Arkansas in a Florence Crittenden home, which
wow, yes, we know about that.
Yes. And according to my adoptive mother, I was the youngest adoptee to be placed. They used to wait 6 months. I don't know if I was actually the youngest or there were probably a whole slew of us who were placed at 2 months when they changed the law. But yeah, and I was placed because my birth mother had put down on the ethnic information that I was part Native American, and my dad put down that he was part Native American. And I have to say, both Ancestor and 23andMe say no. No, you're not. For both me and my dad. My dad thought he was a quarter Cherokee. And before he died, I made him do a genetic test. And it's like, no, you are not. And I know you don't get every single gene, but my daughters are an 8th Mexican. And boy, it's all over the place. Every single thing that my ex-husband's family has said they're from, it is there. But for me, it's all English, Irish, Scottish, a little bit of Scandinavian, but
that's me. That's my genetic makeup too.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah.
So you were in the home.
Yes.
Your mother was in the home. And so you were very young, like you're weeks old, or?
Well, I've met my birth mother, and according to her, I'm not sure she saw me. I don't think she ever even held me. So I was probably put into foster care for 2 months and then released for adoption.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
And how did she come up? What were her circumstances, if you don't mind saying?
My birth mother? She also grew up in Arkansas and got pregnant as a 19-year-old in her freshman year of college. And
what year was this?
This was 1965 that she gave birth to me. I still have that thing of like guilt talking about things, but I'm going to push past that a little bit here. Her father very much wanted the family to keep me. And her mother, in fact, her father died 3 weeks before I was born. I know, very, very traumatic stuff. She was not allowed at the funeral.
What? Because she was pregnant?
Because she was pregnant.
Gosh.
She came, I believe, in secrecy to see him before that so that she could see him before he died. And I was told by her that it was his dying wish that I be kept in the family, but her mother absolutely did not want that. So I was put up for adoption.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she didn't want that either, but she had to go along with family.
Oh, she's never said she didn't want that.
Oh.
She's never said, I really wanted to keep you. In fact, I don't think she did. I mean, how do I know? Really? She's never talked about it.
Yeah.
So what were the circumstances in which you've tracked her down and found all this out?
Well, I have a neuromuscular disease, a genetic neuromuscular disease, and I've passed it on to both of my kids. And I've always wanted to know, about my birth mother, and really, honestly, weirdly, about my birth father. My biological father. I guess he didn't give birth to me, but my biological father. And I just kept chickening out. I did 23andMe about 10 years ago, and there was no one on it even remotely. It's like, this person might be your sixth cousin. And it's like, oh God, you have ancestors from 800 years ago or something, just like unlikely. And finally, during the pandemic, I just thought, well, if my adopted mom had always told me, your mom was a young college student. I thought, okay, if she was young, I should do it now, or it's going to be too late. So I did Ancestry. I'd been told that there are many more people on Ancestry, so you'll have a much greater chance of tracking down any relatives. And the second I went up there, I got a message from a second cousin who said, can you tell me when and where you were born and all these things? And I thought, okay, is this a scam? And so we started corresponding back and forth, and I told her, and she said, well, I think you are the daughter of my cousin. And that was, she turned out to be right.
Had she known about it? Down through family gossip.
Oh, absolutely. My birth mother does not know that. She thought that she kept this a really, tight secret, and not at all. The entire family knew. And in fact, this second cousin had been looking for me to pop up on Ancestry. She's sort of a sleuth, both using DNA tests, but then also using public records and things like that. And so she is the person who connected us. And I found out that I have an enormous extended family on that side. And nobody had this genetic disease, which it would pop up. Somebody would have had it.
Yeah, because it's prevalent in your family, obviously, somewhere.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 50% chance that you will pass it down. And it's definitely that 50% you find out is such a crazy thing to count on. And so nobody has it. Nobody's ever heard of anybody having it, which takes me back to my biological father, who had passed away about a year or two before I got connected with my birth mother. But he died, for this day and age, somewhat young. I've seen pictures of him. He appeared very kind of frail and not well. And he never had any other children. So it's kind of a dead end from that respect. But there is a whole crazy thing about his background as well, in that his last name, he was raised by a man who was not his biological father. It was his mother's second husband, but even her first husband is not his biological father. And yeah, this cousin and I tracked it down to that his father was probably this soldier going off to World War II in Fort Chaffee, which is near Fort Smith, which is where my birth mother grew up. And we actually contacted one person there who was very open and willing to talk about it. And he said, yeah, that sounds like that could be my dad. He has made lots of apology in later life about his behavior when he was young. So that sounds very likely. I also got another message from someone in that same family cluster and said, "You're a match for me, and I'm curious to know how we're related, how you're related to my son." And I immediately wrote back and I said, "This is why we're a match. It seems that this other person, who was not her father or grandfather, but I realized later it could have been still sensitive if it was a relative, was the person who got my biological grandmother pregnant." And I also have been looking for relatives on that side to see if anyone has a neuromuscular disease called myotonic dystrophy, and I never heard back from her. I've written a couple of times and she's not responded.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which I realize now I could have sent a less overwhelming note and just said, "Yeah, let's talk. Let's be in contact."
Well, you're like further steps beyond, and so you put a lot in there, and she's like, "Whoa."
I did, and that's my tendency too. I always feel like if someone has something to say to me, I want them to just get it out there. I don't want to be in suspense, but I realize that not everyone responds positively to that type of communication. Yeah.
So it's kind of a unsolved mystery as of yet.
It is. It is. And that was also very lonely. I mean, I feel like that was sort of the theme. And because it's a rare disease, I didn't know anybody else who had it. And more importantly, my oldest daughter has it much more severely than I do.
Oh.
And I really wanted to find kids and then teenagers and then young adults who had this disease. And it was very hard, although I did later connect to the Myotonic Dystrophy Foundation, and we've met lots of people her age who have it. So that's been wonderful. But yeah, that was also just not knowing anything about it. It was a disease, not that much was known about it when she was diagnosed, and then I was diagnosed. That was 27 years ago, and they've learned so much about it. So things are better now. At that time, it just was like, whoa.
I have a rare genetic disease too that only 600 families in the world have been diagnosed with this. So there is very little info about it.
Do you mind saying what it is, or would you rather not?
Bert, how can I not remember? I will tell you. It's like Bert Hogg.
Yeah, Bert Hogg. That's
Bert
it.
Hogg. Hold on, I will give you Bert Hogg-Dubé syndrome.
Wow.
Exactly. Like, wait, what? It's a rare genetic kidney disease
that my gosh
can lead to kidney cancer, and it's like if you have it, or if you have it, you are 33% likely to get it, kidney. So it's something to keep an eye on, but there's just not enough data on it. So
were you able to find out more about it? Because both of you have found your biological mothers, even if you didn't meet them. Have you been able to find out more?
I have asked, well, my birth mother too was adopted, so it took some time to track. So through her biological mother's family, I have not found any kidney stuff. Through my father's family, I have not found any kidney stuff. The missing link then would be my mother's father.
Right.
I found their family, but nobody knows about that she was ever born or I was ever born. So I found one person who also was adopted into that family, and she's been hesitant to bring me up to anybody in the family. So
wow.
It's still kind of a, I don't know, situation.
I have a question about it. When you were growing up, they obviously didn't know you had it.
No.
So it was undiagnosed.
Right. And I have very few symptoms, and it's a weird disease. It's like a multi-system disease, and I've just started getting symptoms like maybe the last 5 to 10 years. And it's a muscle wasting disease. It can be. That hasn't been the case for me, but it affects your eyes, your lungs, your digestive system. I've had skin cancer on my nose, which it can increase the odds of getting skin cancer and other forms of cancer because it's a mutation on one of the chromosomes. I hear this and it makes sense, and then I forget it immediately. And so, like, your proteins are supposed to be going in there, and it doesn't fit. It's like if you had like something that fit perfectly, and then one sort of melted, you wouldn't be able to get that in there anymore. So that's why it affects so many symptoms. And I've started having really mostly annoying symptoms, digestive for sure. But then also my tongue often freezes, which is really terrible as a podcaster. If I sit and listen for a long time and I'm not really mindful of how I'm holding my tongue, it's like stiff, and it's like takes a while to get it warmed up. So yeah, they're not, and it can also be like a silent killer from a heart issues as well. But
I wondered about that because your daughter has it more serious, and I have a very close friend who has a child with a big genetic disease, but she found community in that.
Yes.
So it's been very huge, and you didn't have that. I didn't know when you were growing up, if you had that kind of community, obviously.
You did say growing up you had some digestive issues. So
yeah, but very different. I had the mysterious once a month, maybe more frequently, throwing up all night, diarrhea, as if I'd gotten a
food poisoning or something.
Food poisoning or a bug of some kind. That's a stress
trigger.
Well, I thought maybe it was stress, and I think, I mean, as a younger adult, I thought, oh, it must have been stress. But now also then reading like stress that you don't even realize you have as a child, which I think is the case for me. And yeah, it's just been such a, I always credit being so interested in stories and doing podcasting and making documentary films from this sense of not fitting in and trying to figure out, okay, how do I fit in? And just listening, I don't know if either of you did this, but so much in my teens and my 20s, I would look at other people's families and be like, that's the family I wanted. That's the family I should be in. I'm in the wrong family. And really having this great sense of like missing out. Like, what would it have been like to be in this family? And again, realizing that even if there had not been such differences with my family, that probably most adoptees, whether they're in the fog or not, have some sense of that they don't belong completely in that family. But
I said this before on the podcast, but I have a friend, and he said that being adopted was like being the water boy on a team.
It's a good analogy.
That you're not, you're never really part of the team.
Yes.
I used to just watch everybody. They were so similar. And when I got married, I married a man from Mexico City, and his family was so tight. I'm close to them still, and just watch them. And for hours, the mannerisms and I got along quite well with my parents, but and my outside cousins and everybody, but they're so different. Yes. I mean, they're just so different. Totally. I can mimic them well to fit, but they are different.
Yeah, I can't mimic well, and I feel like I never did fit. And I think that's so interesting you said that about your husband, my first husband.
Ex-husband.
Yes, yeah, I've been married twice, divorced twice.
Not shocking because we have a lot of relationship issues.
No, not shocking to me at all now. But my first husband had a large family. And I remember thinking like, okay, here's my chance. I'm going to like squeeze in here and be part of this family, which, you know, did not work. I'm still close to many of them as well and like them quite a bit, but I never felt a part of that family either. So it's a really, I love that water boy analogy.
Me
It
too,
really
Sarah.
is just not, I mean, I always did feel like a good acquaintance coming over to hang out for a little bit.
That's what I say now about because my parents were divorced. My dad remarried. I have step siblings, and in fact had dinner with two of them last night. They're very, very, I'm clearly the outsider, and I feel like a good family friend when I go visit.
Yeah.
I'm a good family friend.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, I get that. Both my adoptive parents have passed away, but for sure it was always this feeling of, okay, I've got 3 days to, be there and not really sure how I'm going to fill my time. My partner now, we've been together 12 years, I'm happy to say. But just sort of saying, please come with me. Please come with me. I even said to him, I need someone on my side. So it just was like, yeah, it's such a weird feeling that never goes away, really.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why, bonding for those of us with children so strongly with them and our pets.
Yes.
I'm sitting here stroking Gracie as we're talking.
Like he's too far away right now.
Yeah, no. And I've heard you talk about that experience of having your kids, and it is amazing. It's amazing to finally, I've been told that both of my girls look like me, which I was like, oh, yeah, I'm so happy. Not because I think like, oh, it's better to look like me, but it's just like, I'm so glad that, people look at us like, oh, that must be your daughter, or, oh, because I never had that experience of looking like anyone in my family. Um, and it just feels so easy in a certain way, to be with that person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember people, we've talked about this on the show too. But just my mom, my adopted mom is what, 5'3" maybe, and dark hair, brown eyes, olive complected. And I'm 5'9", 5'9.5", and people are like, oh, you look just alike. Like, really, people? Like,
I know. It's so funny. My
are you
mom was also
serious?
my mom was also 5'2", and I'm 5'7", red hair, like so pale. And then my dad was also 5'7", but we look nothing alike. It's just interesting. And yeah, and that was the other amazing thing. Well, this reunion with my birth mother was not everything I had fantasized it would be either, but I did find a picture of my biological father in his college yearbook, and we look so much alike. It was just like our eyes are exactly the same. Like his baby pictures, like his toddler pictures, his half sister has sent some to me. I could put up mine, and it's so similar, and it's like, oh God, that feels so amazing to see that. And my biological mother, I sent her some pictures. She goes, well, you don't look like either one of us. And I was like, that's so mean. That's so mean. Like
That is mean.
it is. It's clearly like you've never done any thinking or reading about what an adoptee feels like,
What did how did that come about? Like you met and you're not close. Or you are?
Well, no, we're not. We were connected. And of course, as I said, my communication style is just like fire hose. And I said, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Would you like to have a phone call or even a Zoom call? It would be so great to talk to you and ask questions. And her response was no. She says, I prefer email. I'm not good at phone calls. I'm like, okay. But we had a lovely initial email correspondence, although I've gone back and I've read those emails and I just cringe. I'm so like eager to please, like, oh, like me, please like me, tell me that you like me. And it's just like, wow, even in a few years, I have come through that phase. And I made plans to go up and see her. She lives about a 10-hour drive away. And my partner was going to come mostly to help with the drive. And about a week before we were supposed to leave, he had taken off work. I had arranged everything. She calls me. This is her first phone call speaking to me, and really gruffly says, you can't come up this week. I have to go pick up, my RV, which she had been driving it. It was left in another state. And, then I'll have to get it organized. And I just can't. And I was like, okay, for me, I would. And I obviously don't know what I would do, but I strongly believe that I would rearrange everything if a child I had never met before were coming up. I would just be like, RV, you can wait. And I said, oh, okay. Well, fine. And she said, but I'm here now if you want to hop in the car and come. And it's like,
what?
Yeah, it's like, that is not, I work and I don't want to drive 10 hours by myself and my partner. It just was like, that's not going to work, but okay. And then we started texting back and forth and sometimes emailing. But I said to my partner at that time, like, wow, her tone, no wonder she didn't want to talk on the phone, because her tone is so different. Her tone on the email is so, she is a writer and beautifully written, nice emails, but so gruff in text and on the phone. But I did make plans the following January to go with my oldest daughter. My youngest daughter had no interest. She's just like, I'm glad for you that you found her. I have no interest in meeting her. And it's like, well, that's fine. But my oldest daughter and I went to meet her. And there were so many red flags about, maybe a week out from going up. She called and said, while you're here, I'm going to perform a Choctaw naming ceremony for you and my oldest daughter.
Yikes.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And she said,
appropriation much?
Well, that would offend her so much if she heard that, because she spent her life like saying she's Indigenous, and she's blonde hair, blue eyed. And she writes some things on Facebook talking about how DNA proves nothing. And it's like, well, DNA plus not growing up as part of a tribe to me equals not Indigenous. But hey, who am I to say? But
I mean, yeah.
So, but then
I identify as a toddler. Can I go live in a little swing?
Right. Yeah, it's problematic.
She just sounds stunted in a way, like mentally.
Well, this is what I didn't finish saying what she said. So if you're bringing gifts, and it's like, I wasn't, it's the middle of January. And to her, my two half brothers, I found out I had half brothers, and one of my half brother's son and his girlfriend. If you're bringing gifts, that would be the time to exchange them. And I said, well, I wasn't bringing gifts, but I guess I have to now. She goes, oh, just a little something. It's like, okay, so I'm buying gifts for 5 people. I don't really.
What do you even bring?
I brought them journals.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a perfect gift.
Write that one down.
Yes, and yeah, we got there, and this was another thing too. I had misread this, but I thought she had offered to pick us up at the airport, which again, I would have done automatically. And her response was, are you thinking I'm picking you up at the airport? And it's like, oh yeah, I guess I mistakenly was thinking that. And then,
since we're coming so far and to see you.
And we're flying so far.
And I've got a bunch of gifts.
Yeah.
It'd be helpful.
I just picture like Sarah getting off the plane last. Yeah, what do you mean? I'm coming to get you?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so rude.
I know. And it got worse.
Wow.
And I was still in my eager puppy phase. So we saw her and I gave her a big hug. And I swear, like this person who's like hugging me and kind of rolling her eyes. Yeah, I got a lot of eye rolling.
Oh man.
Sorry,
she
Pam.
never asked me one question about myself. She thought I was overly paranoid about COVID, even though my oldest daughter had so many, comorbidities. It was like, no, I don't, this is not a joke. And like asking if the entire family had been vaccinated, like the two brothers, she didn't know. And she didn't care. And then the whole time, like making things like, that's not how you get COVID. And I was like, I wasn't even talking about COVID, but yeah, saying, part of myotonic dystrophy is having some real learning challenges. And my oldest daughter didn't learn to read till she was in 4th grade. And saying, well, you and her teachers were clearly doing it wrong. I can teach anybody to read in 2 weeks. They just don't know how to do it. And other things like, oh, just give her this vitamin and this supplement and she'll be fine. And it's like, this is like the worst of what I could imagine somebody's reception being. And then
I'm sorry for that. That's hard.
It was so hard. And then doing that and then coming back.
How were your siblings?
That's what I'm curious.
They are nice. I enjoyed them. But again, when I first found out, I was like, 2 half brothers. I have a second chance of having a relationship with brothers. And the younger one, I reached out. I reached out to both of them. The younger one responded. And we had this long Facebook chat, private chat the first time. And then, and him saying things like, I've always wanted a sister. And then the next few times I reached out, like 1-sentence answers. The older one, who's younger than me, but he's the oldest of her other sons, answered with 1 sentence when I reached out to him. And they were fine. It was fine being around them.
Were they raised by her?
They were.
I don't know at all. I'm just saying she sounds emotionally stunted in some way.
I don't know.
Well, that brings, I just have this, obviously I'm not a therapist but I just always go back to this piece of like that losing a child, I think is its own trauma, regardless of whether, okay, I'm young and I should give this baby, whatever it is. I still think there's got to be trauma and maybe contributes to some sort of stunted emotional growth.
And in her defense, she lost another child who was killed in an accident. So she's gone through that. She lost her father, when she was very young. So she's had a lot of loss. She's very gruff, at least with me. They spent a lot of time. My youngest half brother had come up to meet me, and they spent a lot of time sitting across from us, my daughter and I, in a restaurant, and telling us about all the amazing travels they'd done and all these relatives where Allegra and I later, my daughter would say, I have no idea who they're talking about. And like, they didn't ask either of us a single question. It was
I hate that,
bizarre.
Actually.
It was bizarre.
It sounds like my dating life.
I was gonna say that. That's what Sarah says about dating.
Right. And my oldest daughter, she walked away from it really angry at my birth mother, but they've patched it up, and she has a very, very active texting relationship with the two brothers, because she's even more, I say I'm very forward with my communication. She's even more. than I am. But for me, it's like that feeling of like, God, I feel like I've been rejected all over again.
Yeah.
Like that feeling you carry as an adoptee anyway, and then not fitting into your birth family, and then coming up and having someone, I really just thought I would be embraced and that we would spend hours.
At least talking about each other and learning about each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your daughter has a texting relationship with her uncles?
Yes, she does.
And your mother?
Yes. Yeah. After a while, she kind of cooled it off and then she just decided, oh, well, I'm going to just continue this texting relationship. But I don't ever initiate a text. The other thing that was so painful, my adopted mother died in 2016, and our relationship was not great when she went. And so I just thought, you know what? I'm going to really work on this relationship with my adoptive dad. He's the only parent really that I have. And I did. And he died in 2022. And
Sorry.
it was painful and traumatic. I was the only person with him when he passed. And it was the same with my mother. Death is not easy.
It's not. I was with both my parents when they passed, and it's a weird thing. And I was the only one. I was with my brother, with my mother, but by myself with my dad to watch. And it's a very strange. It's not what you think.
It's not. The body fights it. And the doctor even said that your adrenaline kicks in because, you know, part of your body's shutting down, but there's still a system that's trying to keep you alive. And it is a battle. It's like so painful to watch someone go through that battle and just feel like, you know, I don't want you to go, but by the same time, I don't want this to be prolonged. This is horrible watching you fight to stay here when the rest of your body is just like given up. And
so did you get closer to your dad? So you did make that connection with him, or?
As best as I could. He and I are just as different as can be. But what I will say, you know, politically, we're very different. And my dad and I just made a pact when Donald Trump was elected. We are not going to talk about politics. We'll talk about anything else. We're not going to talk about politics. And for the most part, we didn't. And, you know, I was happy he got to come as soon as everybody was vaccinated. He got to come to our house, which he'd only been to once before because we'd bought it right before the pandemic, and stay for a while. And, you know, he was going to come down again, and then he got sick and passed away. But my brother and I posted on Facebook tributes to him and things. And I got a text from my biological mother, and she said, oh, you know, I was so surprised to see that your dad passed away. And I said, yeah. And I gave a little bit of background. And her response was, that's too bad. I was like, yeah, that's how I feel. That's too bad. Like, you know, it just was like, okay. And then later, the next day, she texted back. She goes, oh, I was really distracted when I was texting. I said, okay. And I kind of went into more depth about what a traumatic experience it was. And her response was, I understand. And I was like, okay, is that it? And I just felt like, wow, there, like, whatever she's going through, there's kind of no room to.
Maybe it's just simply what Sarah said, the trauma of her loss, losing you, losing another child. I'm sure that adds massive stuff to that. And
father, and she maybe just hasn't truly dealt with all of that. And
and maybe
you know, you're a living reminder of a trauma.
Yeah. You know, it is interesting. I try to not get. I waver between trying to feel compassion and then just feeling really angry about it. And just feeling like, you know, she's still here, I'm still here. Who knows what the future could be, but I don't feel ready to get that kind of cold shoulder rejection thing again. And I do believe, because after, you know, a few weeks after my dad died, she sent me an envelope that just had this pair of antique earrings that said, your grandmother so-and-so's. And that was it. That was the whole note. And I was like, well, thank you. And I have another cousin that I've met, the sister of the one who connected us. She sent me this long, lovely condolence card. And I was like, this is what I wanted. I wanted someone to acknowledge that I'm feeling pain and loss, and just to say, I'm thinking of you. I'm so sorry, and I just thought this is so interesting. And, okay, I just don't think that's going to happen with her. And I don't
might not. There's an old saying in AA, stop going to the hardware store for milk. And I think if you can, find a way to both have compassion for her, but take care of yourself and try to limit your expectations. And, it hasn't been that long, right? It's only been a couple of years. Like, it takes time. It takes time to fall into a natural rhythm with a relationship in it. And I think the only thing you can do is really take care of yourself.
Right.
And manage your expectations and your feelings, and give her the space and take care of yourself.
I agree with Sarah. I was talking with a friend the other day who said about something I'm going through, and she said, does that serve you? Like, what's, you have to kind of look at long term, what serves you. We are in a certain age in our lives now. We do have our children who we love, and our families, and friends. And if someone's hurting you repeatedly, does it serve you, to keep, I like the milk. I'm going to use that. I like that.
I like that too.
Never heard it. It's great.
I got the milk, the water boy.
I'm going to write these down.
I'm a wealth of cliches. And
they're not, but they're the, cliches are always started because they're
cliches. True. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Pam, this has been fantastic conversation. Really, really enjoyed getting to know you. And
yes, same.
I feel like it was just a really neat, in-depth conversation more than an interview, honestly.
Well, but this is what's so special about your show, is like having conversations with people who get it. It's so incredible. Yeah. It's
a gift. It really is a gift to be able to talk like this. And
fills
Thank
us
you so
up.
much.
We're excited to come on your show.
Yes.
I know. Can we share that the next season?
Sure.
In spring of 2024. Is that where we are? Spring of 2024. You guys are going to be on my show.
Yes, we're excited for that. I can't wait to have that conversation.
I'm excited too. Yes.
Okay. Well, you'll send us all your links. We will put those in the show notes, and we will see you soon.
Yes.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you for being here today and being so open and vulnerable. Honest.
Thank you.
Really appreciated.
No, I appreciate you too.
Thanks, Pam.
Talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.